Welcome to the Health Trust Software webinar on creating a private duty nursing plan of care. What we're going to go through today is how to establish that plan of care within the point of care system, as well as how we can set up our flow sheets from the actual Health Trust Software website. We're going to start off by going into our private duty nursing evaluation. As you can see here, I'm going to click and go into the visit. And we're going to use our quick jump to category to move down to our plan of care. Of course, I do not have the Create Plan of Care button that appears right here in the center of the screen. This is a plan of care that has already been completed in our test database, and therefore I only have two options to be able to get into that plan of care by either utilizing View Plan of Care or Edit Plan of Care to go in and make changes to that plan of care. But when this visit is first being completed, there will be a green Create Plan of Care button that sits right here in the middle that will then allow your nurses to go in to create that plan of care for your patients. So I'm going to click on Edit Plan of Care. The first screen that pops up is going to show us that our visit data was validated successfully. If there were any issues with any of the visit data prior to creating the plan of care, that information would be listed here above the Continue and Cancel buttons. Now you'll notice that there is a link here that says click here to use the old plan of care wizard. By clicking on this link, what this is allowing is for you to utilize a more 485 style plan of care creator. Essentially what we're going to utilize in skilled nursing, Medicare, that type of plan of care that's created. And we can take a look at that here in just a few minutes. In order to move into our plan of care, we're going to click the Continue button. If we needed to move out of this, we can always click Cancel. The first page that we come to within the plan of care is establishing the visit frequencies. Now we can set these up for skilled nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, social work, or a home health aide. We can put in the frequency itself. You can also utilize the examples that are listed here at the top of the screen. Enter in your starting date, as well as any special instructions for that particular frequency. At the bottom of the screen, you will notice two links. One says Show Calendar, one says Send Note to Scheduler. The Show Calendar link does nothing more than bring open a calendar for you to establish when these visits are going to occur. Shift visits will occur. It will give us the cert period dates from the start of care date to the end of that certification period. Again, this is for reference only. This can be printed by simply right-clicking and then clicking Print. Our Send Note to Scheduler option will allow us to send a note to our schedulers in the Health Trust software system. It's going to allow us to select what days that patient prefers the visits, what time of day the patient prefers that visits, with checkboxes on each one of these fields, as well as any additional notes that may need to be included for the scheduler to see. Now keep in mind that this Send Note to Scheduler option will show up in the cert period schedule or episode schedule in the calendar once this visit has been passed through care validation. At the bottom of the screen, you will notice we have a Continue button, a Back button, a Cancel link, and a Quick Jump field. The Quick Jump field works just like the Quick Jump that we have in our regular visit note. It allows us to go to any page within this visit note and make our documentation. We can, however, use the Continue button just to move on to our next page. On this page, our common order information. You will notice that we have a field for other diagnosis codes. If there are more than 10 from the diagnosis code page, we can then utilize this field to enter in any additional diagnosis codes. If you're not sure what those codes are, you can always minimize this screen, go back to your diagnosis code page, and utilize the diagnosis code search function. Underneath our diagnosis codes, we have our vital sign parameters. There are two options here. Use agency parameters and use patient-specific parameters. Patient-specific parameters will allow us to go in and make all of these vital sign parameters specific to a particular patient. These parameters will then pull to every shift visit note for the duration of the certification period. Any altering that needs to occur would have to occur from the patient's record in the website. Agency parameters would allow you to establish certain specific set of parameters that will be utilized every single time. That is something that can be set up in the company settings of HealthTrust software. You can select which portions of the parameters you want to utilize, put in your documentation. Once you've completed that, if you need to include any other information you want at the beginning of the order section, you can include that here in our unlimited text box. By clicking Continue, we move on to our Goals and Orders page. Now, the first thing I want you to notice are the arrows located at the right side of both of these boxes. As with our other information on the previous page, these are unlimited text fields. You can utilize these to type out as much as you need to when creating your goals and creating your orders. You have plenty of room to utilize that. You'll also notice next to our goals and next to our orders headers here, a magnifying glass. What this is allowing you to do is to select a predetermined goal or a predetermined order from the attributes menu. These attributes can be added in from the Reference tab located here in the HealthTrust software website. By going to Reference, Attributes, and Add Attribute, we can specify what goals we want to have in the system as attributes. We can do the same thing with our orders. Once that has been done, we are in our plan of care. We can then click on that magnifying glass to pull up that attribute list. We can then select our goal, click Submit, and it will then populate in the field for us. Our nurses can then go in and make edits to that goal and make it patient specific, or they can utilize the goal that they've already established. The orders magnifying glass will do virtually the same thing. It will allow them to click on the magnifying glass, select the order from their attribute list, click Submit, and push that order into that field. They can then, just like they do on the goals, go in and make edits to that order. Now, it is our opinion that goals and orders should be standard, should not be patient-specific when they are entered into the attributes menu. That way, we have a basis framework for our goals and our orders that our nurses can work with to narrow those down and make them patient-specific. Continuing on to our next page, we now have our flow sheets. These flow sheets are going to be established by the RN on the plan of care that will then establish the AM flow sheets and PM flow sheets that the shift nurses will see when they go out to do their visits. We have a key here at the top. A check mark shows that a section should be assessed. A triangle shows that it should be assessed with comments. To add in sections for assessments, intake, output, and treatments, the nurse simply needs to click to put in a check mark. Click one more time to add in the triangle so the shift nurse knows that this must be assessed with comments. If it's a mistake, we did not need this to be on the 12 a.m. section, we can simply click it again, it removes it, we can then move on to our next block to add that in. Now the sections of the flow sheet itself, from assessments to intake to output and to treatments, are all established from the HealthTrust software website through the reference menu. What I mean by that, if we go to Reference and Point of Care Tests / Categories, what this is allowing us to do is to create all of the assessments, all of the intake, all of the output, and all of the treatments that the RN will see when creating that flow sheet. If I scroll down to the bottom of the page, you will notice that it says Add Point of Care Test / Category. You will then notice we have a code field and a description field. The code and description fields are completely customizable. By that I mean you can describe this particular point of care test any way that you want to. The code is nothing more than a shortened version of the description. The code is essentially an easy identifier for you to just utilize to show, okay, this is the section that I want to utilize. It's nothing more than a shortened, abbreviated version of your description. From then, you will see the discipline field. This is where we will go in, click our drop-down menu, and then select Private Duty Nursing. This will then allow us to utilize the PDN section portion. Once we've entered in our code and entered in our description, and we've selected our discipline as Private Duty Nursing, we can then select from the PDN section what portion of that flow sheet that this category should belong. We'll have our assessments, treatments, intake, and output. Once all of these have been established here underneath reference and point of care test categories, when your nurse goes in to complete that plan of care, they will have all of those sections located here on the flow sheets. And whatever section of that flow sheet your RN selects will be the section that your shift nurse sees when they go out to do their visits. For instance, under assessments, if we only wanted the shift nurse to assess blood pressure and not pulse, we would simply uncheck the box next to pulse and only fill out the blocks needed for blood pressure. When the shift nurse goes out to do their flow sheet, under assessments, they would only see blood pressure. They would not see pulse at all because we did not select it on our master flow sheet. Once we have completed our flow sheets, we can click Continue, move into our Review Plan of Care data sheet. This will allow us to go through and check our diagnosis codes and procedure codes, our medications, DME and supplies, safety measures, nutrition, allergies, functional limits, activities permitted, mental status, prognosis, disciplines, assessments, instructions, procedures, as well as our goals. If we see anything that might be incorrect from our Review Plan of Care data sheet, we can then scroll to the bottom of the page, utilize our back buttons or our jump to go back and make those corrections. If everything is fine with this Review Plan of Care data, we can then click Continue. It will pull up our Confirm Plan of Care data sheet. We can then put in our verbal order start of care date and then sign off on our plan of care. Once that is done, we can then click Continue. The system is then going to tell us we have successfully created our plan of care. Now, once this visit has been passed through care validation, the system is going to then create the plan of care and the certification period for this patient. Our plan of care will then trickle down to all of our shift nurse visit notes. If I go back to my point of care schedule and I go back to a private duty nursing shift visit, I can then go into that note, move forward to my flow sheets. I will then see the sections that were selected that I need to assess, what I need to check on intake, output, and treatments for the morning, as well as for the evenings. Once these notes have been turned in to care validation and passed, it will update the patient's record, and then we can move on to the next shift visit note. Once we get to the point that we need to reevaluate the patient and our RN goes back in to create a new plan of care, that system will work the exact same way as we saw in the PDN eval that we just looked at. Now, one thing I do want to point out, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, we're going to go back into our private duty nursing eval, and we're going to go back to our plan of care page utilizing our quick jump. I mentioned that we had the option to click here to use the old plan of care wizard. I would like to show you what that looks like compared to what we just did for our PDN. If I click this, it's going to take me into an identifying the problems screen, which will show me my diagnosis codes as well as my process management. I have the same continue button, back button, cancel, as well as quick jump. I can click continue. It will take me to my visit frequencies page. This functions just the way that it does on the PDN eval in that particular plan of care. We still have our show calendar, send note to scheduler, but now you'll notice where the differences start to appear. We can click this box here to automatically create a home health aid care plan. We click continue. Again, our common order information screen. We have the field for other diagnosis codes, our vital sign parameters, and any other information you want to include at the beginning of the order section. Now, once we get into our next page, this is where we would be selecting our goals, our common goals, the goals that are there for our diagnosis codes, our interventions, all interventions, as well as any custom interventions that any custom goals you may have in the system. If I click continue, we'll have an assessments page with the same functionality, an instructions page, and then a procedures page. Once we have completed all of that, we will move into the creation of an aid care plan. We then have our review plan of care data screen, just as we did before. And then we'll have our confirm plan of care sheet for our verbal order start of care date, as well as our signature. So I just wanted to show you the difference between the two as to what would be construed as the PDN plan of care, as well as the skilled nursing plan of care data sheet. That will conclude our webinar on a private duty nursing evaluation, creation of the plan of care. As always, if you have any questions, you may always contact us at Health Trust Software. Thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day.